I think you've got. I mean, it's the energy drink cup. Like, you lot care about that. We ain't got to worry about that.
Be respectful.
We already won the Community Shield, bro. We don't have to worry about these Mickey Mouse trophies, man. We've already got a Mickey Mouse trophy at home.
Keep the Carabao Cup's name out of your fucking mouth.
Right, he's got more podcasts this season than he has goals. He's got, you know what I mean? He's got more podcasts and goals and assists. So we're talking about that.
Back to the social media derby. Oh, here we go. Do we have to do this episode? Episode 27, fresh off the back of the Manchester derby that we've lost. But to be fair, pretty much all of us saw it coming. Before we get into it, and I welcome Johnson, do the intro and everything. For those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share if you can, comment down below. We're very interactive. We'll generally always reply back to you and spark conversations. For those listening on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platform, make sure to follow. Give us a 5-star review if you can. It will really help us with the algorithms and try and grow the podcast so we can keep giving you this content. Johns, how you doing, mate? Good week for you. 2 wins. Champions League back under control again. Sheffield United, you saw it. Smoky settings were secured. How you doing, though? You good?
Yeah, man, I'm feeling good. It's been a good week for Arsenal. I'm glad I was at least right about one of the predictions I made, and I'm very happy that I was wrong about the other because we got it done in the Champions League on a hard night in the Seville. So I'm glad to see us do that. And then obviously, smoky settings 5-0. I predicted it. I need to start betting on this, man. I need to do a Tonali out here.
Yeah, I think you said 4-0, but 5-0, 4-0, you got it close, and it was a smashing. Yeah, exactly. It was one of the only predictions from from last episode that was actually on point, because I predicted 5-0 Copenhagen. That did not go that way, and I said United City would be a close game, and it really wasn't a close game. So, yeah, I stunk up the joint, as like my team did recently. But anyway, let's jump into United then, since it was the last game of the weekend. Let's start first with the Champions League game. Let's do it in chronological order. So in midweek on Tuesday, I predicted 5-0. We won 1-0, and we needed Andre Onana to save a 98th minute or whatever it was penalty to get us to 3 points. I don't think we played well in that match, honestly. If I'm perfectly honest, I think it wasn't a great game to watch, as I pretty much say every week about United, but I don't think Copenhagen were that good either, to be perfectly honest. I think it was just 2 pretty poor teams. Their finishing was poor as well. We didn't really have any chances to finish in the first place. Overall, not a great game, but we desperately needed those 3 points. We're back in with a chance now in the group. We go away to them, I think, in 2 weeks' time. And desperately need to win that game as well. Did you watch it, though?
I didn't manage to watch it. I was on a business trip, but I did manage to see the cheeky little save, and obviously everyone crowding around, because I think the whistle went immediately after it as well. So everyone kind of crowded around him afterwards. And again, I hate to say this, but it was nice to see, because I like Onana, despite my prediction that he was going to be flop of the season. From his interviews and everything that he said, the accountability that he takes has made me like him a lot. And so it was nice to see everyone kind of crowd around him. I did message you and say, put that up there with Zinchenko crying, because that was was a bit corny, but it was nice to see. It was nice to see. It was a good save, a crap penalty, I will say that, but it was a good save from Onana, and it's good to see him, winning your games instead of costing your games. So, I mean, from that point of view, good. I was wrong too, though. I thought Copenhagen were going to score, because obviously you're Man United and you let in goals left, right, and centre, and I was completely wrong. And it really, they could have, but they couldn't finish their dinner at all from the highlights that I saw.
You weren't completely wrong, though. You weren't completely wrong, because obviously they had a penalty. You should score that. You've got more chances of scoring than you've got the goalie saving it. Incidentally, it was Henrik Larsson's son, I believe, who took the penalty and missed it.
Oh, really?
So maybe there was some inside business there. He was like, I don't want to, Henrik Larsson played for us. But yeah, it was a poor penalty. It was a good save though from Onana, I have to say.
Yeah, it was.
And yeah,
he overdived. Like he
overdived
past it because it was such a bad penalty that they kind of put it straight into the kind of still central in the goal. Yeah,
yeah, it was his top hand who that saved it, and it was he didn't get a good connection on the save either, to be honest. But you've only got to keep it out, don't you? That's all that matters. But no, it was pretty cheesy and pretty over the top to like crowd round him. But as Lincoln coined a few weeks back, it's narrative XG. It just feeds into the whole narrative thing. We needed Onana to have some plus points. He'd probably owed us a solid after the other fumbles he'd had in the previous rounds in the Champions League. So it all kind of tied together. And obviously there was some controversy afterwards too, because I don't know if you saw that. Message, right? Garnacho's Instagram story or tweet or whatever it was, where he had the gorilla emoji with a picture of Onana. Obviously, he's got no clue what that means. He's obviously really stupid and ignorant, but
but I mean, Onana came out and like said, "I knew what he meant. It's not you shouldn't be offended on my behalf." So I think from that point of view, I mean, Onana's probably the one to speak here. I think it is a lesson for Garnacho to not be so stupid. Like I guess it is a minefield today, but to think it through a little bit better before he starts posting stuff on there like that. Luckily, obviously, Onana is not afraid to speak for himself in this case, so he kind of managed to save his arse. But yeah, I think it's not something I want to dwell on too much because I think it's kind of a non-issue. And
it'll be dealt with. He's young. Obviously, there's cultural context as well. I mean, obviously, there's stuff in Spain and Argentina and problems with racism all around a lot of Latin-speaking countries, and not only them, but pretty much every country in the world. But yeah, they've got to deal with it. I'm sure they will. Onana's obviously come out and spoken about it. I'm sure the club will be doing some sort of education piece with Garnacho to know better and be a bit more sensitive, because that's the key here. The context, obviously, I think he's not trying to be racist or kind of touch on any of the stereotypes or the tropes around black people, but obviously you can feed into it unintentionally, and I'm sure it will be sorted out. But yeah, I mean, that feels like ages ago, that match, even now. Obviously we've just played another game. So yeah, anyway, Champions League, let's see, man. Hopefully we can beat Copenhagen away, and then I think we've got a good chance of qualifying from the group. But on to the next game, next United game. Home 3-0 loss to Man City. We were just watching the post-game chat between Gary Neville, Roy Keane, Michael Richards and Jamie Carragher, and it was actually really interesting because I feel like they all had pretty valid points. But if we just touch on the game, I think the first half was not that bad. And I listened to Erik ten Hag's post-game interview, and I don't think he's a million miles off when he says the first half was decent, because I do think we had a couple of breakaways where if we make the right final pass, or the person who's got a shot at goal makes a better decision, we could have scored, and then you could go in either drawing or winning in the first half, and the scoreline reflects the performance, because I don't think City were that great in the first half. There were a few openings. Obviously, Onana made an unbelievable save from that header from Haaland right at the end of the half.
He's got to do better there. He's absolutely got to do
even
better.
Then, you've got to give Onana credit for the save, because it's point blank. He's obviously headed it really hard. He's scrambling on the line to try and make the save, so you've got to give him credit. But Haaland obviously should be doing a lot better. He should score though. I mean, he did score. That's quite a similar header later.
He's given Onana the chance to save it, and Onana obviously it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to save it, and he did a great job to save it. I mean, even if it's at you in that kind of range from that close, it's not an easy thing to save. So of course, big props to Onana, but yeah, Haaland has to be doing better. And I think you saw Pep kind of digging him out after the game there as well to say, "What are you doing?"
I loved how was it Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher both said, "Yeah, he's doing it for the cameras." Pep's got to stop this. It's getting really irritating. I don't know why he never used to do it at the beginning, and it was more of like a Klopp thing to do this performative shit in front of the cameras, like at half time or at the end of games or whatever. But West Brom, a West Brom draw away comes to mind with Klopp fist pumping a bloody draw at West Brom. But now Pep started to do it, so it's a bit of a weird one. But I agree with you. Even though you see a lot of goals scored from that type of header with the ball just going through the goalie because it's point blank. If they head it quite hard, it's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to save it, even if you get in the right position. He should still be doing better, but he didn't. He missed it. And I felt like the first half, I mean, if you look at possession, probably City were full value to be ahead. But if you look at big chances or breakaways, I felt like we gave as good as we got. And I think it probably, going in 1-1 or 0-0 or whatever would have been a fair reflection of that first half. So I get where Ten Hag's coming from. Second half, I think, was a shambles. So I think his substitution was wrong, and it cost us that second half completely. It was 100% the reason why that second half went completely left. From a game that was quite nip and tuck and close in the first half, it just went completely the opposite side, and Man City dominated the whole half. And to be honest, they just looked like they were toying with us. After they got the third goal, it was like they weren't actually trying to score anymore. And maybe they took it easy on us because of the occasion. Everyone celebrating Sir Bobby Charlton's life and taking the opportunity to unite the city and all that. Maybe that's why they kind of took it easy on us and didn't go 4, 5, 6, because they could have if they wanted to. We were all over the place in that second half. Haaland gets the chance to pretty similar chance actually with the header at the back post, and he scores
probably a
it.
little bit harder as well because he's like it was a little bit behind him. He's kind of had to more deflect the header instead of really get some power behind it as well.
Yeah, just kind of looped in a way, and then he sets up Foden for a tap in at the back post as well. But I think City were full value of the win. As decent as we were in the first half, that second half was diabolical. And Ten Hag and the players need to take full blame for that performance in the second half because. Yeah, it was just, even with the players that were on the pitch, even if the formation and the system didn't make sense, you've got 11 players on the pitch, and 11 what they should be top players, you should be doing better than that, and they played terrible. So if we look at the best performers, I don't think there's many options. I think actually Onana had one of his better games for us, and it's quite harsh that he got packed out 3 goals, but I think he made quite a few saves actually. That were good and decent saves aside even from that Haaland save at the back post. And I think it might be a stretch, but I think the centre-backs kind of weren't at fault for any of the goals either. They pretty much did what was asked of them. They just had a really hard job with that front 3 being so dynamic. I think Grealish played really well. I think Foden played really well. And our defence had a hard, long day. Worst performers, I thought Lindelof was poor. I thought Eriksson was poor. I think Amrabat, for the 45 minutes that he was on, he looked off the pace, to be honest. He didn't look like he was at it. So there were quite a few people that underperformed. Then I think you have to look at Rashford, Højlund on the counter. They had multiple opportunities and they made the wrong pass or they made the wrong decision. Højlund was through 1-on-1 and for some reason he kind of dribbled past the goalie and didn't even take a shot. There were a couple of times where Rashford and Højlund were through with a counter with a couple of players joining them and they failed or missed the final ball. So it's just a same old story really. Certain players underperforming and then our whole attack not functioning well. And 3-0 I think well deserved for City, and we were poor, man. And so 10 games now in the Premier League, 5 wins, 5 losses. We don't draw apparently. We either sneak out wins or get spanked. So, this season is looking very, very long. And before you ask me, we're 100% in crisis mode. There's no need asking.
Crisis mode confirmed. Let's move on.
Crisis mode activated. Let's move on. We know it is. But I'll be interested to get your take on it, Jonts. What did you think of the game? Would you agree with some of my points, or do you not even think we were good in the first half?
No, I mean, I think it was a competitive game in the first half. I don't think either team was necessarily good because had you been good, you would have, both of you would have scored more of the chances that you had, right? So I think from that perspective, you were both creating chances. You just both couldn't finish those chances, right? Like, as I said, Haaland needs to be scoring that. McTominay had a great opportunity as well that, made Edison have to put out a pretty good save. It was pretty even in that first half. And I think, it was really the changes to the team and Ten Hag trying to go aggressive, which I think he's perfectly well within his rights to do. You're Man United at home playing against your fiercest rivals. Obviously, it is the occasion of, one of I would say your biggest legend, recently passing away. You want to try and do something for him. You want to try and make it a more competitive game and hopefully get a win. And I think coming off of, beating Copenhagen, I know it's not the biggest win that you've ever had, but the way that you won it, the fact that you kind of got like a last minute save to win the game, I think Ten Hag probably wanted to go at it and see if he could get something from City, because they haven't, let's be honest, City haven't looked great, right? They've been probably at their weakest. We've seen them, which is still miles above everybody else, but they've been at their weakest for a while in the last couple of weeks. So I think he kind of wanted to take that opportunity. And let's be honest, it just didn't pay off. It's like same thing happens in Football Manager when you go gung-ho and then you end up getting slapped 3 goals past you, right? Like, it happens when you're trying to take risks like that. I think he kind of had to take a risk. Had you maybe sat back and just got like a 1-0 loss or something, I don't think the feeling would be any like that much better than it is right now. So it was an embarrassment. It wasn't a 7-0. But yeah, that the change to the game, the substitutions he made, I think kind of ruined it for you in that sense. Like, I can't think of too many chances that you made after that, really. It was you went back to, like, legs akimbo, no middle, straight donut settings as soon as those changes came in. So, I mean, from that perspective, I don't think you can be all that sad. I don't think you can all be all that happy, because you coming into this game, you had to feel like it would, there was a possibility it could be even worse than this, given what they did to you last season in that kind of 6-3. I know that you got clawed three goals back, but it was never as one-sided as parts of that game were. So I think, you can't be proud of the performance, but I don't think it should be a negative to your team morale at this point in time. And I think probably one thing that I want to get into is the penalty, right? So we obviously saw the pundits, right? So the panel of pundits for tonight's match, all like somewhat divided, obviously based off of the biases that they had, right? So I think everyone agreed it was a soft one. Mike Richards was trying to say, like, by the rules of the rules of the book, that that is a penalty. Whereas I think the Man United side of the panel definitely disagreed and said that if we're going to start giving those, then we need to be giving them every single time, which is going to be a lot of penalties. Because I think this is something we've called out before in set pieces. A lot of a lot of like janky stuff goes on in those situations that the referees never call out. I mean, we've even got goalkeepers coming and punching people in the head and nothing happened. So, I mean, what was your take on it? Did you think it was a penalty? And then if you didn't, do you think it would have had like a major impact on the result had it not been given?
Yeah, so it was an interesting one because, when it happened, I think it was Peter Drury kind of alerted everyone to the fact that VAR were checking it. And then they've obviously got the technology to listen in to what conversations being had. And then they get to see a lot of the pictures and stuff that the referee is going to be able to see. So they were already kind of preparing us as the audience, the spectators, that there might be a penalty coming. To be honest, I think it was extremely soft. And it wasn't. I don't actually think it was the United pundits on the panel that was saying or kind of sticking up for Højlund and saying it was a soft penalty. I actually think it was Jamie Carragher in the panel that said we'd have to give it all the time, which quite nice coming from a Scouser. He wasn't too biased.
He's a centre back though. Let's be honest. He's
true. He's got his own other biases in the situation. But it's I don't have a problem with people giving penalties or decisions for the argy-bargy and the dodgy kind of dark art stuff that happens in the penalty areas from set pieces. But it just needs to be consistent. So you mentioned it. A goalie can come out and punch someone and knock out 4 or 5 different players and nothing comes from it. But Højlund wraps his arm round Rodri's waist for less than like 2 seconds, and it's given as a penalty. So yeah, I don't really want to hear Mike Dean's waffle when he's like, "Oh, it's definitely a penalty. The rules of the game, blah 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 blah," because it's never implemented, and we don't see penalties given for those kind of scenarios yet in the Premier League. And if it's going to be one of these things where it's kind of they've suddenly just decided they're going to implement this rule in this way midway through the season, then of course I'm pissed off because we've already had 9, 10 games where that hasn't been implemented. Why are we suddenly implementing new rules or new adaptations to rules during the season? Like, I get it if you want to do something based on the process, like on the Liverpool Spurs game where that horrendous, decision came about, and you want to tweak things that are going horribly wrong during the season. I think you should be able to, but to suddenly change um, you know ways to implement rules during the
especially
season,
if you haven't come out and like apologized for all of the other times where that's
or
happened and you haven't given it. Like,
or
you've given us no indication that was a bad thing previously, and now you've just started picking it out. It's different if you've been apologizing for it in the past, then obviously we know it's not supposed to happen, and then just get it right is all I really care about. But if we're not even aware it's a problem because you haven't come out and apologized or let anyone know that it's a problem, then I do think it would be strange to come out and start just surprise deciding that that's now
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, voila, we've decided between us in our secret meeting last Thursday evening that we're going to suddenly start giving pens for minor tugging or holding people in the penalty area.
I feel like they've got like a wheel. They've got like a wheel every week. They just spin a wheel. All right, we're going to start punishing that one.
Just a week after bloody Robert Sanchez Superman punches Jesus in the head, and they apologized for to Wolves for Onana doing something even less strong in game week 1. Now suddenly a little tug is going to give away penalties. I don't know, man. It just, I don't know. Maybe we're not privy to it, but there are other implementations that they've introduced this season that we've seen either consistently or inconsistently, but we've heard and people have talked about loads. Like the simulation of cards, we've heard constantly that people will get yellow carded if they see that. We've heard constantly that if more than X amount of players crowd the ref, someone will get a yellow card. We know certain things about how the handball rule is going to be implemented, even if they put it up. They at least told us about it. But this is something that they haven't said anything about, and we've seen evidence that they haven't been punishing in earlier matches for all of our teams really, and now suddenly Haaland's pulled up on it. So I'm not angry at the call because I understand why you'd give away a penalty, because he did hold Rodri for a very short period of time, and maybe he was going to get on to the end of the cross, but it just seems like an extremely harsh decision to make without any kind of preparation for that being a rule that's going to be implemented. So yeah, Mike Dean, you can stick that up your ass. I don't want to hear from you, mate. And I actually agree with Gary Neville and Jamie Redknapp, not Jamie Redknapp, Jamie Carragher on that. It's one of those ones where okay, you can't really argue it being given, but you will argue the fact that loads of other people are going to do the exact same thing and it not be given. So you're just, it's more frustration around the consistency of calls, isn't it, than the actual rule not being applied correctly.
So do you think it would have, like, let's say it hadn't been given, do you think the outcome would have been like vastly different from what it ended up being?
Yeah, I mean, we still could have lost the game for sure. I don't think the second half would have been as poor because I think Ten Hag wouldn't have made as drastic a substitution at half time off the basis of going in at 0-0. Like, you're in the game. I even think he made the wrong decision doing it at 1-0 down because you're still in the game. But I understand, like you said, I understand why he made the decision. It was wrong. But I don't think he definitely wouldn't have made it at 0-0. Like, there's no chance he would have made that attacking a substitution at 0-0. He would have definitely, maybe he could have taken Eriksen off and put Mount on, so it would have been more of a like for like if he was unhappy about something about the midfield. But I don't think he would have taken off our only defensive midfielder to put on another attacking midfielder at 0-0. Like, I don't think I think categorically that wouldn't have happened. So I do think it's had a bit of a domino effect on the other outcomes in the game. But I'm not going to blame that decision for the defeat. Like ultimately, we were poor, and we made a series of bad decisions, and then there was a series of bad performances. So I'm not that mad about it. I'm just it's back to the same old thing. Insert my clip from last week and the clip from the week before, and insert the clip from the first week of this season, even from last season. Just the referees are just shambles, absolute shambles. I don't know if you saw taking it off this game very quickly to the Wolves Newcastle game last night, and the penalty that they gave Newcastle for that challenge that they thought Hwang Hee-chan made on I can't remember, maybe it was Wilson or something, and that was a disgrace as well. Gary O'Neill came out and said like he doesn't want to talk to them anymore because until they start improving, he doesn't want to talk to them anymore or have conversations with them. And big up Gary O'Neill. I loved his Monday Night Football appearance as well. He really he's I think he's going to be a top manager, man. He knows his stuff. There was a lot of hand gestures, and he was doing a lot of Rafa Benitez signals and all that kind of stuff. But he knows his stuff, and I 100% agree with him. The referees are abysmal. The Pogmol or whatever, PGMOL, they need to sort themselves out. And at this point, I'm so close from going from absolute fury to just apathy with them because they're just so poor. At some point, it's going to just reach a point where I'm just like, whatever. Give away penalties, give us red cards for ridiculous things. Like it's going to happen because they're absolutely shit. But back to the United game, yeah, I don't agree with it, but it's whatever. We deserve to lose anyway. So,
well, I mean, like on that point and on the topic of managers who know their stuff, it was interesting. One of the things, obviously, that came out kind of after the game, and one of the discussions that was being had in the studio was really just around the fact that Ten Hag, when you watch Man United today, you still don't really know what you're going to get from them. You don't really know style-wise what works, what doesn't. Well, I think you know what doesn't work, but you don't necessarily know what works for them. And I think Jamie Carragher, for once, made a pretty good point, right? Was just, you've looked at Tottenham now with Ange Postecoglou, you've looked at Aston Villa now with Unai Emery, and you start to see this pattern of new managers coming into the league. Perhaps the teams at a slightly lower level. No offense, Tottenham, just relax yourselves. But you aren't necessarily a Man United, right? You're not a Man United of the league, right? So you've got this pattern of them coming in, kind of getting the best out of their players or kind of turning some of their existing players, like let's say John McGinn, for example, scored again today, into, much better players than we've seen from them previously. And I guess this is really my question, which is, why do you think Ten Hag can't seem to get the best out of his players that he's got? Like, so existing players, but also some of the new players, even, he doesn't seem to be getting the best out of all of them. Why do you think he can't do that? Do you think it's a style issue, or do you think it's man management issue? Do you even agree that he's not getting the best out of them?
No, 100% agree he's not getting the best out of them. I think the results are showing and proving that. The performances as well. But it's such a hard one to analyze for me because he absolutely does deserve some of the blame. He definitely needs to improve some of his decision making this season. I think things like we talked about earlier, even about the substitution, I think more times than not last season, his substitutions and his in-game management were superb, really. They helped us get a lot of victories and draws in games where we weren't necessarily on course to achieve those results. But I do think that this season, not only is he making the decisions, like he's getting those decisions, those big calls wrong, way more times than he's not. Like I can't remember a time that he's actually made a decision like that and it's come off this season. But I do think it's quite harsh to say and compare him with Ange or Unai because he's more comparable to Unai. I'd say less so with Ange because I've seen a lot of level-headed Spurs fans admit that this Ange Postecoglou stuff at Tottenham, as well as he's doing, as much as he's a lovable character and he's back and forth with Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville was quite jokes on Friday Night Football.
How'd that go for you?
just copying Pep, mate. Just copying Pep, mate. Going to watch Man City. But he's
what was that accent?
Accents are stinking. Yeah. At least no Aussies will ever be offended. They won't know I'm mocking them. But he's just come in, so there's a bit of a new manager bounce. But let's be real. There's some of that too. When you come in, and it's quite comparable to when Ollie came in. I'm not saying he's Ollie. He's obviously proven to be a lot better of a manager than Ollie, but he's come in after an absolute dour, sour puss of a blood-sucking, energy-sucking manager just leaving. Like Conte leaving is like having, that house uncle of yours just suddenly, he doesn't come to the family, dues anymore. He's passed away, and everyone's like secretly quite happy about it because he used to just cause such mayhem on the family and just make everyone so upset. Like, that's essentially what's happened here. That person has left the building, and so whoever came in, whether they're world class or just a nice guy, is going to get more out of them than the previous manager who'd basically been, killing them before then. So I do think it's a bit hard with Ange. We've got to give him more time and Tottenham more time to see if that is actually what's happening. It certainly does look like that on the field. But I do remember when Ollie came in, we were slapping teams. There's a reason why Rio was saying sign a ting. He didn't go completely. It wasn't completely him getting hyped up. We were actually playing really well at the time, and Ollie had us playing, some decent football. It was counter-attacking, and he proved in the longer term he didn't really have the tactical acumen to actually get us playing in that way consistently. But there was that kind of new manager bounce that had come in post Mourinho, who's very similar to Conte in this scenario at Tottenham. So it's harder to compare Ten Hag with Ange, but I think Unai's a good one because Unai's come in at a similar time. He's now in his second season. They played really well in the back half of last season. They've started to develop a strong style. They made really good signings. They've got a structure at Villa now that makes complete sense. A lot of synergy between their DOF and Unai. They've got Monchi, obviously, from Sevilla. And we don't have that. And Ten Hag is making poor decisions, but I don't think he's getting a lot of guidance or support from the structure. We obviously know the club is run terribly. But it's also quite hard to say and make a definitive evaluation of his performance in terms of getting the best out of his players this season because, get the violins out. We've had a lot of injuries. I don't think if you look at what he would imagine his best 11 would be with the new signings and everything integrated, I don't think we might have 3 or 4 players in the team that would feature in that best 11. Maybe 5 max. But essentially the defense is, I don't think any of those guys would be playing. Maybe Dallo, but the rest of them wouldn't be playing. I think the midfield, if you look at today's game, you'd be playing Casemiro. I would imagine you playing Mount. I imagine you're playing Bruno somehow. That's got to be his idea, right? He's not bought Mount for no reason. He's got to have seen something and thought that's going to be the team. And then up front, Højlund, Rashford, and I'm guessing it would have been Antony without any of the dramas. He would have been like the starting right winger. So he's missing quite a few players from the team, but the players that he has got is almost like the ones that you didn't want to have in an injury crisis, if you understand. You'd want to have the Lissandros, the Casemiro playing how he was last season, Varane, Luke Shaw. You'd want to have those guys kind of stay fit if you had a bit of an injury crisis because they seem to have a bit more cojones about them and have a bit more grit and determination. And the players that have all been injured or gone for whatever reason have been those players that I was praising last season for being kind of game changers to the way we were playing and the results we were getting.
I want to pull you up a little bit on one of those things though, because I appreciate for sure that you've had a lot of injuries, right? And it's something that before I would have said, yeah, get your violins out. But I think, with Arsenal, I've learned to appreciate a lot more about how injuries can really mess everything up for you. I guess my question would be though, even the players that were really good for you last season, I'm thinking of the Rashfords, I'm thinking of the Martinez, I'm thinking of the Casemiros. Even them this season, he doesn't appear to have been getting the best out of them, right? Like Casemiro's been really shaky. I do think that that's somewhat system based. Rashford looks like he couldn't give a toss about the team or playing football in general. He looks like Benoit Asuakoto right now. He just wants to get his paycheck and go home. And obviously, Lissandro was shocking for the parts that he did play, just being so rash. So I guess in that point, there is like the opposite of a new manager bounce that's seeming to happen at United right now. It's like an old manager flop, where your best players from last season are starting to not perform quite as well. And I think that's where I'm going to like ask, like, do you think one of the things I was going to say was, do you think that, you know, the changes that he has made to the team have kind of been bit part changes, and really what he needed to do was change everything at one time, so you don't have this like half in, half out kind of strategy? Because one of the things I think I've observed really is that he's trying to play a different style of football than you did last season, which was very counter-attacking and worked really well, of course, but I don't think is the Ten Hag style. And he was trying to adapt last season to what you had. This season, he's managed to get a couple more signings in, and it seems to me like he's trying to play the style that he eventually wants to play, but he just doesn't have enough changes made yet for it to actually be effective. And it seems to be having like a really bad effect on your best players, like I was saying before. But just generally, your performances have been poor because you're not very good at playing that way yet, and you don't necessarily have the right players to fit. Do you think there's that in it? Do you think maybe he just needs to revert back to how he was playing last season?
I agree with you though that I'm not saying if we had all of those players we'd be playing better and we'd be winning. I'm just saying you'd then be able to make this evaluation as to whether or not he's getting the best out of the players. I think at the moment you can make that evaluation. It's just always going to have some asterisks next to it because I don't think we've ever had this season our first choice 11. Maybe in the first few weeks for one or two games we had them. I can think of the Wolves game at home and maybe the Spurs game away where we had all of those players playing. But from then onwards, we lost all of our left backs. We've lost Varane. We've lost certain midfielders intermittently. You had the Antony situation, Lissandro. It came out that he's been playing injured the whole time, and our medical department didn't spot the injury recurring, and that we've actually fired some of them off the back of that because he's now had to have another big surgery on it. So I'm just saying it would be very harsh. I get it because we're a shambolic team at the moment, so it makes sense to be harsh on us because we've been playing poorly. But I just think it's hard to make that evaluation fairly. But I don't think it will work. Like, I don't think this system change and the players he's bought is going to work now. Looking at the players in isolation and looking at what he's trying to do with this makeshift team, I can't see how it's going to work. We talked about it early on in the season. Even if Lissandro's playing as well as he did, right? And let's say the injury is hampering him, he plays better. Maybe the back four is slightly better, but it's still going to take some adaptation. And Arna's obviously a very different goalie than De Gea. We talked about that. But it was the midfield that we were always worried about. And really, that's the part that he's tinkered with the signings. Getting the Amrabat in, getting the Mount in. That's what he's changed. That's what he's hoping to change, along with Højlund up front, having a focal point. Those are the areas I think really that he was trying to tweak. And it would make sense because last season our defence was really strong. You could say our midfield was decent and our attack, if we didn't have Rashford, was basically non-existent, right? So I understand why he's looked to try and improve those areas. I just don't think it's going to work with Mount, Bruno and Casemiro. For the point you just made, Casemiro I don't think is like a temporary form thing. We've talked about that. I think he's slowing down now, and Jamie Carragher's going to be proved to be right. And again, I have to hold my hand up on that. I think he's got a point about Casemiro. As much as I love him, I think we've just got to be realistic about it. So I don't think he will be right, Ten Hag, and I think he might be the cause of his downfall. That when those players come back, we still play shite. We still don't have a game plan. We still are not developing, the style of play that he's looking to create, and we continue to have patchy form. And the annoying thing is, man, I wouldn't say it's quite a David Raya with Ramsdale situation for you guys. Just, it's not broke, don't fix it. But we did have a enjoyable style of play. I know a lot of people are saying counter-attack last season. I do think that's how we played against the bigger teams. But if you watched us against the smaller teams and the other, mid-table teams, we weren't counter-attacking. We actually had a lot of the ball, and there were a lot of passages of play that got a lot of United fans really encouraged. We'd see like 30 pass moves leading to a goal at the end. We'd see a lot of movements that were being repeated by certain players, and it gave us hope. And the understanding and the development we wanted to see was that kind of style being implemented against the big teams rather than just going counter-attack and letting them have the ball or do something that, you know, you're used to seeing from United in previous years. Try and see if he could implement that same style in the bigger games. And it seems like what he's done is the opposite. He's taken the style that we had in the bigger games and implement that in all the games, and say stuff about being the best transition team and all this kind of stuff. Which for me, that's the big head scratcher, because as much as we beat a lot of the bigger teams at home last season, I don't think it was sustainable, right? Like, I actually think some of our performances in the other matches were more sustainable. They happened more often, and we were able to beat those other teams playing more of a kind of possession-based style with lots of different phases and lots of lots of work that he'd been obviously doing on the tactical side. So I don't know, man. I think this whole thing is a bit of a conundrum, and it just seems like either he's going to be the Mad Hatter genius when this style works, or he's going to, you know, the cards are going to come crashing down. And really, it could be that not having his best players is almost like his saving grace now, because it would be extremely harsh to fire him if you're playing Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans at centre back. You know that's not their first choice, so it's a bit harsh to be like, why are you so shit? Play champagne football with Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans. You know what I mean? It's kind of unreasonable to be doing. It'd be, you know, if you're playing bloody, you know, El Neni and Jorginho in midfield, and all your fans start saying to Arteta, "Come on, they need to be playing like Xavi and Iniesta." It would be extremely harsh, wouldn't it? So I think, you know, it could even get even worse for him when we do get all of our guys back, and if we still play poorly, then
I don't think it's helped.
Blame the board. No.
I agree, but I don't think it's helped that Maguire and McTominay have decided to start performing decently well, and maybe bringing Johnny Evans back. Also, even though he's you know, offering a good option to you right now, might end up being his downfall, is that he's had to rely on the players that but your fan base and your team as a whole kind of almost turn their nose up at, right? Like, we're better than that. We need someone better than Maguire. We need someone better than McTominay. The fact that they're coming out and performing better for you than most of your, you know, the other players, like, I know you haven't got all of them, but like Rashford, for example, right? It's clear to me that McTominay right now is probably more of a goal threat than Rashford. So that could be, I think, more of the downfall in terms of losing fan support, is that for so long your fans have hated these players and had a good reason to. And now you almost have to rely on them and kind of take back some of the things that you've said about them, or at least keep quiet about them, because now they're actually the players that are winning you games and helping you getting man of the match performances and so on.
Yeah, I don't think so though. I get what you kind of mean, but at the same time, they have been playing better, and it's not a case of, you know, fans can't come out and lambast them because they've actually been playing okay. But they're playing football in their style still, right? Which is always the problem, and that's the thing that doesn't connect them, right?
It's the optics of what it looks like from the outside.
Look good.
I'm not saying it's justified. Yeah. I'm just saying from the outside,
they look good.
You're like, you know.
Yeah, they look good. Ten Hag looks bad because they're essentially playing in the team. They're getting results, or they're, you know, affecting the games in a positive way for the club when he's essentially said they're rubbish and I want to get rid of them, right?
Exactly.
But fans need to look at it from a logical sense and be, you know, don't concentrate on what they see in front of their eyes, but think about the bigger picture. So I'm not saying Maguire's rubbish. I'm not saying Evans is rubbish. I'm not saying Scott McTominay are rubbish. They're obviously been playing fairly well and been our best performers of the last couple of weeks. But the bigger picture is Ten Hag wants to play a certain style. Those guys don't fit in that style. Even when they're playing well now, they're still playing the type of football that they can. Like, we're not asking Harry Maguire to play on the halfway line like we did at the beginning, and he proved that he couldn't do. We're not asking Scott McTominay to sit in front of the back four and shuttle and marshal and protect it like we did at the beginning. We've been asking him to go further up front and affect the game in places that he could. But obviously we don't want to play him there. We don't believe he fits in our style that way. Same with Maguire, same with Johnny Evans. So it can't be a reactionary thing. We have to look beyond the fact that they've impacted games positively and think, do we want to play the style of football that they're good at? Which, if we do, okay, support them. So, you know, then you basically have to say, Ten Hag, get out. because he's never going to play that way. So you just have to look at it that way. You can't have those players and Ten Hag. When I see, Paul Merson and some other guys say, Harry Maguire's their best player, he should be playing. I've looked at the stats, and when he plays, they're the best. Blah, blah, blah. How can he not be playing him? It's not about the results.
Terrible impression
you Wally, you stupid Wally. It's not about the results, though. It only is it. It's about a style of play, and this is the thing that all United fans will, I think, be in unison about. Sure, results matter, but the most important thing, and it's what we're jealous of other teams about, is the style of play. Like, we're not jealous of Tottenham's fancy stadium, even though Old Trafford, people say it's leaking and all that kind of stuff. Like, the bigger thing we're jealous about is the fact that they actually play an attacking, attractive football. Same with City, same with Arsenal, even Liverpool. The times that they were playing at, really attractive football, we were jealous of them too. And that's the bigger thing. And that,
I mean, Ten Hag has come out and say, like, he has said on record previously, it's about, first of all, how, like, winning, and then second of all, about how you win. So even he's made the distinction that results come first. So
he has to protect his job, doesn't he? Our jobs are not on the line. If we win, our job, if we lose, our jobs are not on the line as fans. But what we want to see is some good bloody football, mate. I don't want to see Louis van Gaal, 85% possession with 99% of the balls being played backwards or sideways. We actually want to see some good football. And so, yeah, with that, I hear what Jamie Carragher's saying. Right, this season it doesn't look like, it looks like and I hear what you're saying, it looks like we've taken steps back. And the style of play, whether you think it was counter-attacking or whether you actually thought last season we played some decent football as well, then we're not doing that now.
I'm not even saying that counter-attacking football isn't decent football. I like it as well. I like it perhaps more than some of the possession-based kind of bore you to death football that you see a lot these days. I think the counter-attacking looks nice, and I think quick transitions, Rashford getting on the ball, nuts in party and smashing it bottom corner, is beautiful football, right? Like, as much as it hurt me to watch that, it was beautiful football. So I'm definitely not trying to be snobby that, like, counter-attacking football is not a good thing. But I hear what you're saying. I think we should probably get on to the next question, which really, I can talk about, like, creativity, right? And, like, playing.
This is your Odegaard get back from last week.
It's not even the Odegaard. This is not the Odegaard get back at all, because I'm not questioning his ability. I think it's quite clear to me that Bruno is your biggest creative outlet, and he's not just your biggest creative outlet. He's one of the biggest creative outlets we've got in the league, right? I think if you look at the stats, it kind of proves that. If you look at his performances with the international team, he's unbelievable, right? Like, in terms of how many big chances he creates, I think he's actually number one, right, in the Premier League right now in terms of how many he's created, which is nuts when you think Kevin De Bruyne is in the league. So I just want to get onto the more of a question of his character, which is probably more harsh. But I mean, it seemed in the studio that, like, as you probably can imagine, Jamie Carragher was calling him out. He's not the right player to be captain. He's not captain material. He's too moany. He's not carrying the team like he should be. And obviously Roy Keane's going to jump on that. That's one of the things, even if it's against a United player, he's going to be able to agree with that, because he was the epitome of what you want a captain to be. Maybe almost too much at sometimes. But what do you think about this idea that Bruno is not captain material? Like, do you agree with that? And if you do, what's the alternative? Like, who would you want to see as captain if you could start the season again?
Okay, so this is a hard one, because the Bruno chat is very much loaded with a lot of people's opinions about, I don't know, beautiful football or the right way to behave, etc. It's got a lot to do with a lot of these different moral beliefs that people have. So people get onto him stylistically about the hoofball stuff, which I agree with. It doesn't always work, and he's got to be able to understand when to, keep the ball on the floor and make smart decisions, which I think even that side of, his personality and his attitude has proven so far that he's not been able to do that. So that makes me question him a little bit. But then again, like you said, the benefits of the hoofball stuff is it makes you extremely creative. And so maybe he's making the best choice based on what he thinks is going to get him and the team the best results. So that could be a positive on his, moral personality side. But the attitude of the rolling around, trying to kick people, moaning at the ref,
and then getting kicked himself when he tries
Yeah,
to
I mean,
kick other people. Stones done him in.
this is the only City shout out I'll give as Johnny Stones, General John Stones. Well done, mate. Because if I had someone steaming at me trying to do me, I'd do the same thing. And he nailed it. He got it perfectly. He left one on Bruno. Ref didn't even see it. Bruno got hurt, and he deserved it based on the pure stupidity of the decision to try and do Stones in front of the ref. It was ridiculous. But I think this captain discourse is really outdated, man. I have to be honest with you. I really don't think the captain's armband means shit. I don't think it makes a difference. If you look at the most effective captains right now, they aren't the Roy Keanes. They aren't. Like there are very few at the big teams that have a captain who's like a Roy Keane. The majority of the captains are your Odegaards, your Ruben Diaz's, or KDB's, or whoever Man City's captain is. They're not the
Kyle Walker, right?
Yeah, they're not the Roy Keane type captain. They're more of the Steven Gerrard type captain, which I'm going to wear the armband. I've got the respect of the players. I move in a certain way, and I lead with my performances on the pitch rather than my inspirational abilities. And that's where I've got the issue with Bruno. It's less about the stupid little snidey things that he does, because to be honest, there are a million Brunos out there playing across Europe and South America and different parts of the world. It's a cultural thing. I don't think you're going to be able to stop those kind of behaviors and remove them from him, because I do believe it's not personal to him. I believe a lot of it is a cultural thing, and you see a lot of players from those parts of the world playing and doing those little things in that way. We talk about Spain a lot, right? The dark arts that came to the Premier League. A lot of it came from Spanish, Italian, Portuguese players coming in, and that's how they play. That's not personal to any one of those players, right? Like Luis Suarez is a huge shitbag, but there's a million Luis Suarez's, right? He is, right? But there's a million Luis Suarez's. He's not unique in that. And I think the same with Bruno.
I mean,
the bigger problem is
that he was like that. He was definitely on a extreme.
He was on the far end,
like him and Diego Costa were on like the very far ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, they were.
But you're right that they were of a similar ilk.
Yeah, exactly. But they were the extremes, and I think Bruno is not on the extreme like them, but he's fairly far up on that side of the spectrum. But it's more the performances stuff that I think make him at the moment an unsuitable captain. If you want to use the captain thing and put any gravitas on it, because ultimately the captains now have to be the role models. They have to be the ones who, even when they're not playing well, are giving 100%, doing all the right things on the pitch from a performance perspective. I don't care if he shouts at the ref. I don't care if he does little stupid, embarrassing things like he did with John Stones. If his performance is of a level that he's bringing the best out of the other players, which I believe now is the only thing a captain should do, right? And it's not down to just him, because everyone has these captain leadership groups of like 3 or 4 players. The bigger problem is, if you take Bruno out, who are the other captains in the leadership group? People argue it might be Casemiro and Varane. I probably would agree. I think we were all raving about them last season, coming into the team and making an impact on the team, and they're not there right now. Same with Lisandro. But you shouldn't only look at the best teams in the league. The best teams in the league almost have like a team full of those characters. If you look across at City today, who could you name out there that was the biggest leader? I don't think you could say. They've got loads. They've got almost the whole team as leaders.
It could be Stones, it could be Kyle Walker, it could be pretty much any of the players
Diaz,
in the team, really.
Yeah, it could be anyone. It could be. There's almost 9 or 10 players on that pitch that you could say are the leaders, and we don't have them. And it takes me back to that that Athletic article that Ollie did as soon as his NDA ran out, where he talked about all the stuff that was going on when he was at United, and he said, the Harry Maguire captaincy thing was only because no one else put their hand up. And he asked and approached a bunch of players, and they all refused it, and they didn't have the minerals to take it on. So that just tells you about our our atmosphere and what's going on in the dressing room. Like, we just don't have those characters, and it's something that we've lost since Alex Ferguson has gone. It seems like we don't do any background on any players. They could be the worst characters and have the shittiest personality ever, but if they could do that spinny thing that Antony does, we'll pay 85 million for you. Come on down. So it's an absolute shit show.
Spinner,
yeah, it's absolute shit show. So I think they're going in, and it's gonna get their ratings up to have Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher say that. But honestly, I still think he's the best of the bunch, and I don't look at those attitude things as any marker of whether someone's captain material. It's about the performances, man. That's what matters the most. You have to be.
I think you have to offer one of the
players.
two. That's the thing, right? You can offer one and not the other. That's totally fine, right? Like, if you offer the performances and not the attitude, people will still let you go, right? There are plenty of captains out there today that don't behave all that well, but are really important for their team, and so that's why they get the captaincy. Or the other way around, they are the perfect model for the players that you want in your team, and as a result, you give them the captaincy. I know everyone's going to shout at me for this one, but Jordan Henderson's a great example, right? Like, don't try and tell me he was one of their best players. He never was. But at the same time, he was one of their characters, the role model of, I don't have the talent necessarily, but I'll work harder than anyone else here, right? It's like the James Milner type model. Those are good players to have as captains. And you, as I said, you've got to have one or the other. And I think with Bruno, no one really is going to call him out on his attitude if he's just getting a goal and assist every match, right? And I think that's the issue really, is I'd probably prefer to have a captain that was not well behaved, but like the role model of what you want all of the young players around your team to behave like, even if his performances weren't, always the greatest. I think Trent is, again, I'm going to get killed for this one too, but Trent isn't always very good, especially this season. He's been stinky a lot of the times that Liverpool have been stinky, and he's their captain now. And I get it, because he's the homegrown lad. He's, the role model of what you want those young players to come through and become in your team. And I think in that perspective, I get what you mean. You've got to have one, and in this case, probably performances are more important, especially when you're Man United right now, and performances aren't, good performances are pretty hard to come by. But I do think that there is a certain, that there is still a place in the world for a well-behaved or a role model type captain.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think so. To be honest, I agree with the points you made. I mean, apart from Jordan Henderson, because he's,
No, but I mean, he's one of the most successful captains they've ever had, right? I get it, and he's not very talented, but he does have the right mentality. He had the right kind of temperament to be a captain.
I would argue. No, I'm not denying that, but I would argue that's what I mean by performances, though. Like, he was a 7 out of 10. I'm not talking that he's got like he wasn't doing 10 out of 10s ever, basically, but he was a 7 out of 10. And he was very stable and steady. He never really dropped down to like a 4 or a 3. He never had clangers. He wasn't a fluctuation type player. He was the player that was always going to hit 6 or 7, and he would be there. And by that, I mean, like, he's essentially what I think when I'm describing a Stevie G type, kind of captain.
But isn't that the problem then with giving your captaincy to a creative player? Because they're not going to be as stable as a
that makes sense. That makes sense. That's why. Positionally, maybe I think there's more doubt on Bruno, because it's harder for a player like that to be consistent. So you're kind of setting him up to fail. Because I honestly don't believe the Roy Keane passion, inspiration captain that pulls extra out of his players. I don't think that works now, because the dressing rooms and the players don't react to that type of character anymore. And the Jordan Henderson example uses a good one for the performance side. I'm trying to make, because he was always there and dropped a 7 or 6 out of 10 every single time. And he didn't shout at players that much. He was like, just look at what he's doing. He was on the pitch. He was working hard. He was doing the right things. And he was never dropping a stinker in those games. And I would give the example now with actually Virgil is the Liverpool captain, right? And I think it makes sense that he is. And Trent's the vice captain, because Trent is more like a Bruno. I know Liverpool play a different system, and their wing backs or their full backs are the creators. So he is the high volume creator type character. And your example makes sense as to why I think he's probably not a good captain, because he's going to have those fluctuations like Bruno does. And I think you need to have more of a Virgil as the captain, who's just going to, barring his Newcastle outburst, is generally quite a steady player, right? Like he's been known to be a fairly steady player for them and just play pretty well. And I think that's the captain you need in this day and age, is that mold of captain. And they can be a shit house or they can be more chilled and laid back. But the biggest thing is they need to be able to perform at least this, they need to be the steady guy who's performing a 6 and a 7. Roy Keane was actually, I think we're doing him a disservice. He was both, because Roy Keane was a class. 6 or 7 every single week. He never dropped down. He never, went flying up that much. And then he also had the passion on top and the inspiration. And I don't think you'll hit the lottery like that again. Like you won't. Like the dressing rooms aren't made up like that anymore. And
that style of football you get sent off a lot these days.
Exactly,
so it's difficult to do that to rile people up without getting
Roy Keane or Joey
without double footing someone, without double foot like Craig Bellamy type vibes, right? So it's you don't really get away with that. So I can see your point about like that style of captain maybe doesn't have a place in the game anymore. I just think, and it's no slight on Bruno, maybe it is just a better idea not to let him be the captain so that he can focus on creative outlets. Because even Odegaard, like I would like him not to be the captain just so he can focus on playing and being the little wizard, like the magician that he is, right? It's like, they didn't give it to KDB. They want him to be able to focus on playing really well. And I think maybe it's no fault of his own, but maybe it would make more sense to give the captaincy to somebody else. And I think, I would have said, had his performances been better, Onana's a good one to maybe for next season or in the future to be a captain for you, because he's got the right attitude, he's got the accountability. Just right now, he doesn't really have the performances. But if you get better as a team, then he might. And I seem like Onana's number one fan here, but it's not on purpose, because there really isn't anyone else from your team that I'd say is a great captain, role model type of player. I would say Luke Shaw, you'd hope sometime maybe in the future could be. Varane could be, but he's getting on a bit. I think Martinez, Lissandro, maybe he could be, but again, he needs to be able to hold his head a bit better to be able to do that. And outside of that, I'm thinking Casemiro is too old to be giving somebody the captaincy like that. And again, Rashford is somebody you probably hope would be a future Man United captain, or at least like a really core part of that kind of leadership team. But it doesn't look like he's got the kind of mentality to be a captain either. So I think it is slim pickings, and I can see why they'd give it to Bruno, but I just think it is maybe affecting him negatively because he's getting called out in the press for it as well now, right? And I know maybe he doesn't watch it, but at the same time you're going to hear about it, and that kind of pressure on your main creative outlet is probably not a great situation to have, especially when you're in this space where you're just not doing very well as a whole anyway. But I think that's kind of the way I'd say it. Is I can't see Bruno being a long-term captain for you. I just don't think it makes sense.
I think he will, but I understand what you're saying. Like, you'd hope you'd have 3 or 4 options to look on or call upon as a captain, but I just really don't think we do. And it shouldn't just be senior players. It shouldn't just be your best players. They need to have the right personality. They need to have the right positional sense, like you said, to the cause. Like having Cam as your captain, unless their style dictates that they're going to be very stable, it's highly unlikely they will be. They're going to be, your hero ball type players, and therefore it's going to be probably pretty ineffective as captain. So yeah, I think it's I don't think it's worth the time that they spent on it on Sky broadcast today. To be honest, there was other problems, and I know Gary Neville, I think, has a problem with Bruno as captain as well. He's called him out on different occasions as well. So I'm not saying it's a bit of an agenda, but it's kind of just something that I don't think is. We know he's going to be the captain. We know why they've given him the captaincy. We know there's not many options. So it's all good saying, is he right or not? If there's no other options, then, it's a moot point. Let's just move on to more pressing problems, like why are we not playing well? Why do we not have a style of play? If you want to call him out for that, I think you've got a fair shout. But on the captaincy thing, it's just one of those like English football heritage things to care so much about the captaincy. I don't think people care about it that much in other leagues, because you generally have just loads of characters who could take the mantle when needed. And we don't We don't have any. But let's go on to the Arsenal chat now, because this has been a depressing hour that's passed. Let's chat on some good stuff for you and get that little smile cracking out of you. So you got first. Let's start with Sevilla. So you predicted a 2-1 loss. So you stunk that one up. That was a terrible prediction. It was actually a very, very convincing. And I'll say it. No, no, you were quite far away, because I'll give Arsenal major props on this. Yeah, that was such a professional, like unbelievable performance to go. I know Sevilla aren't the best team ever, but we talked about it on last week's pod. It's a really hard place to go. They've got crazy. We talked about heritage. They've got crazy European heritage. I know it's mostly in the Europa League, but still, they've got European heritage. And you guys, I know 2-1 makes it seem close, and the last 5-10 minutes, you were defending a little bit back to the wall, but up until they scored, that was one of the most convincing away displays I've seen anyone, have at Sevilla at their stadium. Like Gabby Jesus, I think that's a huge blow that he's injured. But I thought he was amazing. But anyway, what's your take on the game? Did you not think it was that way? Because I thought it was an amazing display.
I think it is, but I mean, if you end up having squeaky bum time at the end of it, then it's not that amazing. You know what I mean? Like you can be amazing for 89 minutes of the game and still lose. Like I think from that perspective, yes, we were. It was a pretty confident display, but at the same time, like we didn't go in there and like dominate possession like 70-30 or anything like that, right? Like we had to struggle for it a bit, and I think I agree with you. Like to me, it was like a consummate professional type of performance, right? You go to a place that's difficult to go to against a team that is not bad. They're a good team with a lot of heritage in the tournament or in Europe in general. And we did what we needed to do. I don't think it was convincing necessarily, because again, the scoreline is 2-1. We didn't batter them 5-0. So again, I think we did what we needed to do. I was wrong with my prediction for sure. I didn't think it was going to be a close, like, I didn't think it was going to be like a really one-sided game to either team. And I don't think it was a one-sided game to either team. I just got it the opposite way around. And I'm happy to do that, to be honest with you. I'm happy to predict a loss and we end up winning, because, that's the only time I really want to be wrong. So, I mean, from that perspective, yeah, it is a massive blow that Gabby Jesus is out, because, and it's so typical of football fans, right? Is everyone's mocking him and saying like, "Oh, he's crap. He couldn't score. Like, he couldn't hit a barnyard with a banjo. You need another striker." Blah 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 blah. Everyone's like jumping on us, saying that oh, he's not a proper out and out striker. It doesn't matter what he does off the ball. Blah 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 blah. Right? They give all of that malarkey, and then we win that game 2-1, and I go on X and I see, oh, Gabby Jesus, we don't need another striker. Everybody's like, it's just straight like prisoner of the moment BS that we're doing again, and it's massively our fans, but also massively a lot of other fans too, and not necessarily like the United Trays and all of them kind of dons, because they're obviously going to keep quiet when they're wrong, but it's like the tacticos and the ones that are like, oh, but Arsenal needs someone better, and then he comes out with a good performance, gets a goal, gets on the score sheet. Now I'm seeing stats about how many goals he scored in Champions League over a certain amount of appearances. I saw like 14 appearances and he's got like 13 goal involvements. And I'm just like, where were you lot when he was struggling? Like, where were you lot when everyone was trying to diss him? And it's just, I get it, it's for clicks and all of that other stuff, but it rattles me so much, because I'm just like, you guys are so clearly biased one way or the other. And it's the same way that we're like, so-and-so Postecoglou has proven that he's a much better manager than Ollie, and I'm just like, he's been there for 9 games or 10 games and he's been good, and now everyone's like, yeah, he's better manager than Ollie, he's over Ollie's career or whatever. I'm just like, yeah, he looks like he might be, but at the same time, give it a year and let's see where he is. And it's the same thing for all these lot talking about Gabby Jesus. Oh, we need another striker. Oh, he's not enough. Oh, Nketiah is shit. And now look at him. Nketiah's come out and bang off a hat-trick. Like, come on. Like, there's got to be some level-headedness to this conversation. Like, we can't just keep swinging backwards and forwards, bro. I'm just like...
No. We're swingers, mate. We're swingers.
we are swinging like Tarzan out here, bro. No,
I do agree with you on the scoreline, but I do think that was a false 2-1 scoreline, to get back to Sevilla very quickly. I know it says 2-1, but honestly, you guys were peppering the shit out of them until they scored the first goal. And 2-0, you should have been 4-0 by then. I think Odegaard like missed one, not a sitter, but he had what I would expect him to score at 2-0. And there were a couple of other moments where you guys could have scored a fourth or a third. That didn't happen, and then the way it works out, it gets a little bit squeaky at the end. But if you're going away to those teams, there's gonna be a period where it gets a bit sticky, as Hedy once
I'm
says.
remembering the United game definitely got sticky for a certain
exactly.
amount of time,
it gets sticky for a bit, and you guys to reduce it down to the last like 15-20 minutes or whatever it was. That's a phenomenal performance and result, man, because you're fighting against not only the team and the like really rampant supporters in Seville, but also the heritage part, which is a weird like spiritual thing that's evolved in some of these teams and some of these competitions. And you guys did it, man. And Gabby Jesus, I agree with you. We joke about the swingers thing, but people are moving from left to right and moving the goalposts at all times. And you very rarely find someone who sticks to their convictions and has like an opinion or a thought, and even when the tide goes against them, stays strong to it and sticks by it. Like I do it definitely on the show. I'm already Team Ramsdale again and F. Ryer and all that, right? But yeah, essentially, no one's there shooting in the gym, as Drake says. Like when you're going through the tough times, and that's what's happened to Jesus when he's not been scoring, and he's had a really poor performance against Chelsea. And even thinking a couple of other games before that, he wasn't great. You know what he's like when how well he can play when he's on it. So you have to have some faith and remember that he's coming off injuries and all these different things, and he'll hit his form.
He's been playing him out of position for half the season as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like
that was a great game.
No
nuance.
He was
so good.
There's no nuance in the conversation about him. Yeah, no, he was class, and it's all of those things that you appreciate him for, plus the thing that he's usually missing, which is a goal.
He scored.
And
his finish was great.
When he does score, you like, oh, this guy's like, he's the complete package. But when he's not scoring, I get why people jump on his back, and you see the CF or ST on a score on a lineup, and you think this guy's got to score. I get it, but there's so much that he offers to the team outside of just goals. Like he offers so much, and he's such a nightmare for any defense to handle. And I think that just needs to be recognized. I get that we need to rely on players to score, but he's class. And that game showed it that he was class. And I'm really sad to see he's injured again. If it kind of feels like he can't catch a break. Yeah. And that kind of leads me to believe maybe we will go and get another striker or something else like that, because he just can't seem to catch a break to give him the run of like really good performances for all of the fan base and the manager to be like, yeah, that's not a player that you can take out of the team.
So you guys now are back in control of the group, man. I think that result
have that lens.
Yeah,
have that.
Have that lens. Yeah. So you've only got one away game left in the group, and that's going away to PSV, who are looking actually pretty good, to be honest, in the Eredivisie. So it won't be a foregone conclusion, but I would say, and people would say, looking on paper, Seville away and Lens away were the harder away trips of this group. So you do kind of have this group under control now.
Yeah, one more win in the group, and it's a concluded group,
right?
At least from our perspective,
Yeah. Fair enough. That's great performance by you guys in that game in the Champions League, and then followed it up with an absolute comprehensive spanking of Sheffield United. You did call that. You were close, very close. You should have just matched my prediction on the 5-0, and you would have got it spot on. Arsenal 5, Sheffield United 0. Nketiah hat-trick.
No one's going to be calling me a guru for that, because Sheffield United are...
Oh, yeah, they're absolutely poor. But still, they've gone to Tottenham, and Tottenham had to wait until stoppage time to be able to get a win. 2-1, squeaked it. City just about beat them away. We just about beat them away. As absolutely horse as they've been, it hasn't been absolute smooth sailing for everyone when they played them. Until now.
No Derby County, let's put it that way.
Well, they might end up being, but... this performance was really good, man, and you rotated the team as well. So what did you make of it?
Well, I thought it was a really good performance. I don't want to read too much into it because again, it's about the level of opposition. And no offense to Sheffield United, but those aren't the games
You
where
can't say that now.
Well,
We
yeah,
can't say no offense.
Full offense to you, but it's not about you. Is my point, right? It's like we rotate our team, and that's really what we need to be doing to be where we want to be and to be challenging for the title. You've got to be able to rotate your team and smash them 5-0. So, I mean, from that perspective, like it you know what I mean? Like things don't always come off how you expect them to come off, and when they don't, everyone is rightfully livid. But when they do come off,
them like hashtag United.
Yeah, no. But when it does come off, you can't be like, "Oh, we're so good, we beat Sheffield United 5-0." You got to be like, "Yeah, that's kind of what we should be doing." I'm straight Roy Keane here. That's your job. Right? That's what you've got to be doing to these lot. So,
I mean, play the under-11s, will win 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, again, and Sheffield United fans probably say the same thing. We've spent billions on our team, and we've got all this, that, and the other. You've come up from Championship. But this is what should be happening, right? Like this is what is supposed to be happening. And unfortunately for them, at least they're not getting pumped 8-0 like Bayern just did. So, take the wins where you can, lads.
But they did get pumped 8-0. They lost 8-0 to Newcastle. Have you forgotten that already? Like 3 weeks ago, they lost 8-0.
That was them. Oh, yeah, fair enough. All right, lads. Yeah, you stink. Yeah, get back in your box, lads. But I think from my perspective, Nketiah's hat-trick was great. Scrappy first 2 goals, you know what I mean? Like he just gets the ball, finishes it for the first one. Second one, I thought had he been 1 yard further back, that was going Rosette. That second goal, by the way, like he sliced the life out of that, and somehow he was close enough for it to go top corner. But I'm definitely not thinking he did that on purpose because that was that was a massive slice. And then the third goal is just class. Like the third goal is smash it from 30 yards out. It's not something I've seen from him before, but I'm glad to know that he has it in his bag. It was great, like to see him get that as well, especially when there's all these conversations about we need another striker. I've had those conversations too, and I've said to Nketiah when he's trying to chip people and he's like smashing it straight over the bar, and he's like just missing really easy chances. I've been saying it too, like what's going on with you, mate? You can't be this streaky. So I'm hoping he's not straight like back bacon out here. I'm hoping that he can keep this up, but. Like it was a really well finished hat trick, and I'll give him that. Right. Outside of that, great to see Tomiyasu get a goal. I think there's less than 15 Japanese players that have ever scored in the Premier League, and he's just added himself to the list, which I'm really happy to see. He looked really happy, and he looked so so shy as everyone was kind of jumping on him. It wasn't a great goal. But you're not expecting a great goal from a lanky centre-back type player anyway. So, I'm happy to see him get on the score sheet. And then, obviously, Fabio Vieira, great penalty, mate. It was a shocking penalty, to be honest with you. The goalkeeper should have saved it. Fodderingham, what are you doing, son? But, yeah, no, I think he just sold him there.
No offense.
So yeah, no offense, Fodderingham. I do actually like you. Anthony will attest to that. So, yeah, it was a really, well-rounded performance. It seemed like everyone, all of our kind of less appreciated players bang goals, and you've got to love that, right? Like I think, and I'm happy it wasn't Jorginho because he's underappreciated for a reason. So yeah, no, it was really good from us. It was nice to see Emil Smith-Rowe on the pitch as well. Got himself an assist, I think.
Yeah, he did,
good to see him come back, and good to see him fit as well. Just nice to see him on the pitch. I hope he gets a run of games if he can, or at least get some subs appearances, because for some reason Arteta's not even been bringing him on for anything, and that's kind of been worrying me when he's bringing on Fabio Vieira constantly and never bringing on Emil Smith-Rowe, and really they're going to be similar-ish kind of positions. So nice to see. I think I can't say anyone's a worse performer. I think they were all really good. I think again, it's against Sheffield United, so it's not it's not that hard. But anyway, yeah, we were class, and I think I've got to probably give it to Nketiah because he's got his hat-trick, so he's going to get best performer of the day, especially for that third goal. Can't score a goal like that and me not give you plaudits. So take that one. Go on, Super Eagle type vibes out here. Is that right? No, he's Black Stars. Shit. He's not. Go on, Black Stars, not Super Eagles.
I was going to say, you're going to have the Ghanaians on your neck. But no, man, you didn't mention Decky Rice. And I
Decky
thought
Rice
Decky
is
Rice
always
was
good. I ain't got to mention him anymore, bro. I ain't got to mention him. He's on a different level. We're on different vibes now. Decky Rice is up there.
Oh,
He's up there.
Basmati rice.
Rice pudding out here, man. We don't have to talk about him.
Decky Rice, he's literally become basmati rice. He's a staple in the household. You don't even question it anymore. He's just there.
Ain't got to say
but
nothing.
No, he
about
was.
Decky.
Jokes aside, Decky was really good as well, man. And I said this at the beginning, man. I'm gonna pull back the tapes and say that is. I called it from the beginning. He's a DM, and I get it. It's hard to like quantify or say that they're worth the price tag. But Declan Rice is 100%. Like, he was a banker, and he was always going to be someone that if you pay 200 million, he's still going to give you the same level of quality performances throughout. And we talked about captain stuff. Declan Rice, I believe, is a better fit to be your captain than Odegaard, because he doesn't drop stinkers. Even his lesser performances, they're maybe a 6, maybe a 5.5 out of 10. They never drop down to 2s and 3s and just have absolute putrid performances. That he always going to be a 6 or a 7. Sometimes he might go up to an 8 or a 9 if he's scores amazing goals like he did in the Chelsea game or whatever.
Against Man United, yeah,
exactly. Comes up with big winners, yeah. So yeah, he was great as well. I think he deserved a bit of a shout out. But yeah, you can't not give it to Nketiah. He scored a hat trick. One of them was a screamer. I mean, there was a bare screamers this weekend. Shout out Jude Bellingham, big man out here. What a goal. Unbelievable. And we've been talking about it off air, and I've been tentative to give him too much hype because, everyone's been going big on the Bellingham, best player of the world at the moment stuff when he's scoring shanks and tap-ins and shinning them and whatever. But my God, he said, hold that, because that first goal was disgusting. And then for him to pop up with a 90 plus 5 minute winner away at Barcelona in your first Clasico, my God, the minerals.
He's made himself the star of that
Unbelievable.
team.
And they got Vinny Jr.
in that team.
Yeah, they got
exactly,
Vinny Jr.
Right?
And Vinny Jr. was clutch. Champions League winning goals, whatever, he's done it. Clasico goals, winning goals, whatever, he's done it all. And Jude just said, hold my beer, I'm the guy. And he's gone absolutely nuts. And we were all bantering Birmingham City for retiring his 22. Those guys are geniuses. Geniuses.
That was very forward thinking.
And they're owned by Chinese owners. Yeah, 100%. The Chinese owners went to the Don to read his palms or whatever, and they said, that guy will be your best guy in history. Retire that shirt now, and you'll get abundance and you'll get whatever, and promised him all the money, and that's why he's done it, because it's coming true, man. Jude is looking crazy, but also the youngster from PSG scored a screamer as well. Zaire Emery, he scored a disgusting screamer as well. So there's been screamers going in. Harry Kane scored from his own half as well. Unbelievable goals this weekend. But that Nketiah goal was class, man. And yeah, big him up. Do you think now, we've just talked about Jesus and Nketiah now sang their praises, does this mean no Ivan Toney? You're happy to go with those two up front for the rest of the season and next season? Or do you are we still going to go through this rinse and repeat when they play badly or miss goals and say you need a striker? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to stick by him, or you still believe you need something?
I'm going to stick by them because I think they both need to be really important parts of our team. But my argument would be that Jesus has got other positions in him. And I think that his being able to play in like Saka's position or being able to play out wide will be really beneficial for us, because it's obviously proven now that like Martinelli, Saka aren't just invincible. They can't play every game forever. And I do think there's still... Here's the issues. Like, I think that somebody else, like a Trossard or some of these other players that I don't think necessarily deserve to get kind of kicked out of the team, are probably going to have to make way, and we will end up going and getting somebody like Ivan Toney. And to be honest with you, I do think we need that. And the reason I say that is not because Nketiah or Jesus are bad, but because I think Ivan Toney will offer us a different style of football to be able to play that we can't play right now. And you know that one of my biggest critiques of our team is we got one style, and if it works, we're amazing. If it doesn't work, we look quite shoddy, and we don't really look like we have a plan B. And yes, we've managed to like scrape some wins, some really important wins as well, and I don't want to downplay them too much. But at the same time, you look at City and you look at the way that they can play like 4 different styles and still be good, and you look at like maybe Liverpool can't play multiple styles, but they're so good at that one style that they force everyone to play it. Like there's no way to get away from Liverpool's style, right? Like you get into a straight shootout with them, and they've got Salah who's just going to shovel one into the back of the net over and over again. So, I mean, from that point of view, I think we do need Tony, because I think Gabby Jesus is great because he is a real big handful for defenders. Nketiah clearly, when he's on song, is nuts as well, and he can be a really good finisher. But somebody like an Ivan Toney, I think, would give us more of a target man kind of player that we might need in some of those games to give Odegaard some space, to give some of our wingers a bit more free time instead of everyone just doubling up on Saka because we've got Nketiah up front. And that's no slight to Nketiah or Jesus. They both are very good players, but at the same time, that dynamism that Ivan Toney might be able to offer us, I still think is what we're going to need in the long run to be, Premier League winners. And maybe this is the ruthless part of football, right? And obviously Arteta's come out and said he's got to be ruthless every day. There's always 12, 15 players that aren't playing. He's got to be ruthless every day. And I think maybe that's the part where we need to still be ruthless, is that Nketiah and Jesus are great and they will have really good times and they will have some not so great times. But it doesn't change the fact that I think we need to be able to play slightly differently when the occasion calls for it. So I think we still need a Ivan Toney type of player.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I get the logic behind it, and I think, interestingly enough, I've seen moments in games where you have played a different style. It's generally when Havertz comes on and you put him up front, and then you start playing a bit more direct, like you did against City in the last 20 minutes or whatever it was, and like you did against Chelsea and to get the equaliser. You saw a bit more of a direct style of play, and they went through it on Monday Night Football, and it was really interesting actually. And it makes a lot more sense why you got Havertz, because he can do that as well as be an option in midfield. The only worry is, and the only reason why I asked you that question is because you just don't have many slots left on your like squad roster. You're going to have to really sacrifice someone, because I don't believe you can bring in Ivan Toney and keep the current roster of attackers and midfield attacker hybrids that you've currently got. Someone's going to have to be sacrificed, and that's why it's interesting why you kept Reece Nelson, why you kept or signed Havertz. What you're going to do with Trossard? Like it's interesting because someone would have to be sacrificed, and it would have made sense if Nelson left, because he's not really playing, is he? He's not touching the field very rarely. So it would make more sense if you kind of let him go and then signed the Havertz and then got the Toney in January when his ban is over. But it's going to be interesting to see, because I think it would make sense, and he'd definitely he's better than Havertz at doing what Havertz has done, right? So it would definitely be effective. But a player that was part of, I think it was the City goal from that direct play was our boy Tomiyasu, the Japanese G
Super
that we
Tommy.
love, Super Tommy. He came out this week, or he mentioned it, I think, after he scored the goal yesterday, actually, that he dedicated the goal to his mum, and she had passed away last year. And it got this question in my head coming up. Like there was periods of last year where he started really well when you signed him, and there was a lot of Arsenal fans, I think, got beyond the whole who the hell was Tomiyasu and the Sky Cave saying no one else wanted him and kind of unfairly shitting on him. And he started really well, but then suddenly his form dropped. You think of the goal he gave, he gave to De Bruyne, against City.
Goal. That was
there was some,
point,
there was some injuries. Do you think? I mean, let's be honest, right? Like we've had a parent pass away. It can F with you big time, and we don't really know how much that influenced him. But do you think that had an impact on? You think maybe that's why he wasn't playing so well, why he got injured, why he was pulled out the squad? And do you think that he's is this a moment where he's let it out and now he can move on? And you're seeing some unbelievable performances from him, because we didn't shout him out from the Sevilla game. I thought he was incredible in that Sevilla game. He was so good, both defensively, but also inverting and doing a lot of the Zinchenko stuff. Like, he showed another facet to his game, and in this game he scored as well. So do you think that had a big effect on him? And do you think now he should get a spot, because he's been playing well off the bench a lot this season?
I've got to think that it would have affected him. Like, I don't think there's any kind of red-blooded human out there that wouldn't have been affected by something like that happening. And I think, for a player that doesn't really come out and talk very often, right? He doesn't come out and spill his guts all the time, like old Grealish or whoever else they're trying to shove on camera every 5 seconds, right? Like, and this is the sad part about football, is that if you don't hear from them, you don't really empathize with them. You don't think, oh, maybe they're going through something. You don't really care. Like, it just doesn't come up. And I've got to think that if your mother passes away, that especially when you're so far away from her, probably in England where she's likely not, it's got to be difficult for you, right? Like, I mean, I've lived in the other side of the world, and I know how alienating it can feel at times, and I can't imagine something like that happening to me while I was away. So I've got to think that it would have contributed to his performances, right? How could it not? And I think, again, he wasn't great at certain points of last season, but again, it was he's new to the league, he's new to the team, there's plenty of other reasons why he wouldn't have been playing so well, why it might take him some time as well. And obviously giving away a goal to De Bruyne wasn't going to be great for confidence either. So I think from that perspective, like, it's nice to to understand more about who he is. And I'd love for him to come out and talk a bit more, and hopefully one day get him on the pod, because there are a large portion of footballers today that aren't English speaking, that we never hear from, and that we, as a result, tend to be quite harsh to, right? And as we've talked about before with this whole English bias stuff, about how like everyone's trying to protect Harry Maguire's mental health. No one gives two shits about anybody else's mental health if they're not English, do they? Right? Let's be honest, right? If they didn't grow up in Sheffield and whatever else, then we don't give a toss, which is sad to say. But on your second question, do I think he deserves an opportunity to get back into to the team, and do I think he will get that opportunity? I think firstly, he definitely deserves to get back into that team. And the reason I say that is also another one on the same point I made before, which is he offers us a different style. Like Zinchenko, I like the style that he offers us. It's nice to see him inverted. He does a good job there when he's allowed to. But at the same time, I want someone who can bloody defend. And Tomiyasu clearly can, right? You saw him, even like, we're talking about good performances. He dominated Germany when Japan smashed Germany to get, what was it, Joachim Low got sacked after that game.
Yeah.
Like, he was one of the major reasons why, because he absolutely dominated that German attack. And a German attack that is not bad. Like, everyone talks about how the German team is not so great now anymore. That attack is still really good. Right? They got Musiala in there. That's a really good attack. We've seen what he can do. So I think from that perspective, Tomiyasu deserves a place in the team again. And again, I think it will be based off of the circumstances, right? If we're playing against teams where we're going to get more of the ball, we're going to get more space, and Zinchenko has his time to play his his threading passes, then sure, go ahead and play Zinchenko. But there's going to be plenty of teams that we're not going to be able to do that against, right? People are starting to figure us out, and having Tommy there is not a bad idea, right? Like, he's more mobile, quicker. He looks like he's better on the ball even than playing Gabriel out left. We haven't got Tierney anymore, so I'd like to see it. I think it is good for Zinchenko to have some proper competition in there to say, you've got to learn how to defend, mate, because we can't have you getting nuts by every Tom, Dick and Harry and giving away leads, mate. It's just not happening. I'm not having you crying on the pitch all the time and getting mocked by everyone else. So, I'd like to see Tommy get on the pitch a bit more. Do I think he will start every game now? No, because I don't think that's Arteta's style. But he definitely has earned one for sure.
Yeah, no, it's fun. You're cracking me up. I've got so many nicknames for Zinchenko. It's so funny. You've got Krychenko. You've got Trentchenko because of his defending as well. I'm not a big fan of Zinchenko for many reasons. Obviously some of his political beliefs as well have been exposed now with the situation going on in Israel and Gaza as well. And it's just, he's just not a good look, man. It's not a good look, bruv. It's not looking good, bruv. So bring Tommy in. And I'm telling you, he's a rock. I love Tommy. He's been one of the best signings Arteta's made since he's been manager. I think he's so versatile. The fact he can play right back, left back, centre back. You could probably even play him in DM. He'd be all right in there as well. And I just think his football skills on the ball are very underrated. Because okay, he's very good defensively. That's he's proven that in many matches so far. But that Sevilla game was eye opening because Sevilla are no slouch away. He ran. He just he drove with the ball so much, and because he's big and lanky and kind of a bit gangly, you kind of don't expect him. Yeah, you don't. You don't expect him to do that, but he just protects the ball well, and he was making some really nice line breaking passes in that game as well. So I'm a huge Tommy fan. I'd say get Krychenko out, put Tommy in. I think it won't be a massive downgrade.
You've got to go from one extreme to another, haven't you? Tommy is great. I told you. Love him. Get Krychenko out.
I just said I'm. Maybe I used the wrong phrase saying swinger, but man moves from one goalpost to the other. I'm not in the middle ever. So get Krychenko out, the stupid. Bring in Tommy. I love you, Tommy. God. He's a G. Shocking. And I think it's not purely based on the other, external things that we've talked about. I think his performances, man, he's earned it.
No, he's deserved it.
He's played really, really well.
100%.
And so, yeah, I'm all in on Tommy. And yeah, big up Tim speaking out as well about his mother passing. It's a very difficult thing to go through. And yeah, I'm sure it had an impact on him. I saw some other things saying, who was your inspiration in getting in football? And he said his mum. So, it's obviously more than just a parent passing away. It's obviously quite, a very influential part of his life. So rest in peace to her and big up Tommy for, reaching these levels now as well. It's a big deal. Let's get on to the last question I got for you then. Is more around these changes. We kind of joked about it earlier. Sheffield United are rubbish. You should be able to beat them in your second team. But, which I all agree with, full offence to Sheffield United. I 100% agree with that. But do you think that this means that he's going to go strong in midweek in the Carabao? You've got West Ham away. Do you think that means he's going to bring back Gabriel, bring back Krychenko, bring back your other midfielders that you've been playing recently, Odegaard, for example, who didn't start? Or do you think you're going to see a similar 11 in that game as well? And would you be as confident in slapping West Ham the same way you did Sheffield United?
I think it's a half and half. I think he will go back. He will strengthen parts of the team again. I don't think he's going to go full strength 11 again, though. I think it will still be a lineup that is somewhat surprising to some people. I think you've got. I mean, it's the energy drink cup. Like, you lot care about that. We ain't got to worry about that.
Be respectful.
We already won the Community Shield, bro. We don't have to worry about these Mickey Mouse trophies, man. We've already got a Mickey Mouse trophy at home.
Keep the Carabao Cup's name out of your fucking mouth.
You lot are more like, I'm leaving here with something. Yeah, we already got something to leave with. Don't worry about that, bro. No, I think it will be 50-50. He's going to go back like a full strength in certain parts of the team, but I don't think it'll be like a full, like as if we're playing Man City type 11. Do I think it will be as easy as against Sheffield United? No, because West Ham aren't shit, right? Like, Sheffield United.
I don't know. West Ham lost at home to Everton today. They're pretty shit.
All right, yeah, fair enough. That's shocking, but I feel like Everton are just, I don't know what they bang Judge because they've managed to get some wins now. And it saddens me. Dyche football's back and it's here to stay, apparently. But no, I don't think it will be as easy as against Sheffield United. I think it will be a hard-fought victory. I still think even with like not a full strength 11, but like at least half of our first 11, we should be beating them. Why are you laughing? They're like, yes, they were playing out of their skin earlier this season, and everyone was getting ahead of themselves. And yes, they're the European champions now, apparently. But at the same time, come on, like we've got to be able to beat them lot, right? Like we've got to. I mean, we should put out our under 23s again and batter them. So again, I'm not trying to be snooty here, but we should be able to beat West Ham, right? Like them lot might say whatever they want to say, but if they were in my position, they'd be telling me this. They'd be saying the same thing, right? You ain't on our league, mate. You ain't at that caliber.
Where's your European heritage, bro? Where's your trophy?
Hey, we've won the equivalent of the UEFA Cup, All right, I've forgotten what it's bloody called, but we have won something that now apparently doesn't count anymore. But back in the 70s was the equivalent of the UEFA Cup.
Man's talking about the Intertoto Cup.
It's not the Intertoto. I'm going to find the name of it and shut you up. But it was the equivalent at the time of the Europa League. All right.
All right. Fair enough. So what's your prediction then for that match? Do you think you will actually beat them now that you're saying you should be able to beat them with half?
They've got Mikel Antonio up front who he talks more than he scores, man. Right, he's got more podcasts this season than he has goals. He's got, you know what I mean? He's got more podcasts than goals and assists. So we're talking about that.
Oh, and he had the cojones to call out Richarlison. What a dickhead! I don't care what Tigo says on Filthy Feathers. He is so shit. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, all right, he's much better than me, and I'm worse than shit. But as a Premier League striker, I think he's got to be bottom 5. He's fucking abysmal.
Well, this is where you hear about, he used to play right back. Yes, of course he used to play fucking right back. Have you seen him shoot? Like, what are we talking about? Like, of course, that makes sense. He needs to go back to right back, right? He needs to do Antonio Valencia, but even more extreme, and just go all the way back because he stinks. So if we let in goals against him, there's serious problems in our team.
That's loading. That's loading.
But, I mean, maybe, like Bowen could get one. Paqueta's not bad. So I think we probably, maybe like a 3-1, 2-1. I think we can get it. But again, with like a half full strength 11, yeah, we should be able to do that. We can't let Gollum get one over, man. We can't let Gollum and his precious get one over us.
Oh my God. You've been cracking me up this episode, honestly. I could say you've got Barcelona away. What do you reckon the match will be? Oh, we've got to be beating them.
Don't even put that on me, right? Like I said against Sevilla, we were going to lose. And West Ham are no Sevilla, all right? Playing against West Ham in the Carabao Cup is no Sevilla in the Champions League, right? So I think we need to be beating them 3-1, right? Like, why is that? Why is that nuts? Like, winning 3-1 is not like absolutely smashing them. I'm not saying that.
Mate, it is to me. It is to me.
Yeah, for you, 3-1 is a slapping, exactly. But for me, that's just a light little breezy win out here.
Oh my God, you're killing me. Oh, West Ham fans are about it as well, so we better be respectful. They're not Sheffield United. We can't be going in on that.
You nearly got relegated last season, right? Like, just because you won a European trophy doesn't mean that you didn't nearly get relegated, lads. Like, come on, let's be serious here.
I don't know if you've heard, but West Ham are massive. So I actually think West Ham are going to win. I'm going to go, come on, the Hammers. Yeah, what do they call them? What's it called again? Like the Ferry Liquid FC. Come on, Ferry Liquid FC. You're going to win 2-1 West Ham. And Mikel Antonio is going to score so he can try and claw back his goals to podcast ratio for this season. And yeah, you're going to have to run it back. But you know what? I wouldn't be shocked if you battered them because West Ham are just one of those.
Depends what day you catch them on.
Yeah, it really depends. They can look really good and then they can lose at home to Everton. You know, we've done podcasts where we've talked just as disrespectfully about Everton as we have Sheffield United. They're rubbish. So yeah, it could go either way. But I'm going to go Carabao Cup. I think you're probably right on your kind of strength. I think you probably won't go second string completely, but you'll do like a hybrid between the two. And I think that gives West Ham a chance of an even better chance of pulling out a better performance. So I'm going to go for the shock. West Ham 2-1. Defeating Arsenal.
So I'm talking them down, and now you're like saying, "Oh, they beat us 2-1 is a shock." So I say we beat them 3-1 is disrespecting them, and now 2-1 to them is a shock. What game are you playing right now, man?
Mate, it's content. I'm just trying to get the content going, baby. All right, so let's move then on to our Carabao Cup fourth round match, home to Newcastle United. It's a bit of a strange one, actually, because Newcastle have been playing really well. And then Dortmund happened in the Champions League. And then Wolves happened yesterday. And I don't know where to go with this because I know how shit we are. But it's hard to gauge where Newcastle are. And I think that's the biggest and most important thing in every single Man United match going forward is it doesn't matter what we are, because you can take it for granted we're rubbish right now, and we don't play well. But we've got some players who sometimes do good things, so we can beat teams, but equally we can lose. So it really makes a lot of, the biggest variable here is how the other team are performing, whether they're in form, etc. And it's hard for me to gauge because Newcastle, we could beat them and we could win like 2-0, 2-1, and we could have one more of the positive bad performances that we've seen so far this season. But equally, we could lose 1-0 or 2-1 and have, the negative side of the bad performances that we've seen recently. So I'm going to, just because Newcastle have looked a bit shaky, and I feel like we owe them after that whole rubbish that Eddie Howe was saying in the Amazon documentary, we're going to stick it on him, and we're going to go, away the lads, back up to Newcastle with a 2-0 loss. United are going to win 2-0. What do you think?
I reckon it'll be the other way around. I think they'll beat you. You're talking about how bad they are. You just got beaten 3-0, mate. Like, settle down. You beat Copenhagen 1-0. You beat Copenhagen 1-0.
That's about the same as Newcastle. Come on.
No, because I mean, this is where agendas come into it, and you're a notorious Newcastle hater. I think they could do you in, man. Like they are a better team than you, and I think that will show. The quality.
They've only got 2 more points than us in the league. They've held big licks to a couple of teams already.
They've had a really hard draw though. At the same time,
yeah,
whatever. They've had really not easy games. They've played a lot of the top kind of contenders in the league already.
Yes, but I'm not bringing us on Newcastle's level, right? Because whatever you're say,
not on it.
Newcastle are shit. And they're below us in level, right? Even us in our worst period are better than Newcastle. I'm never going to hear it from them. Yeah?
Shocking.
But they've held beatings from Brighton. We've played Brighton and lost as well. They've lost to Man City. Did they lose to Man City? Yes, they lost. They lost to Man City, and they beat Man City because they beat them in the Carabao Cup, but they also lost to them in the league. Yeah. They lost to 10 men Liverpool at home. Shocking. They lost. Who else? They got pumped by someone
10
else.
10 men Liverpool. You got pumped 7-0 by Liverpool last season, as if that's like a slight on them. Liverpool have been nuts this season.
They had 11 men. They had 11 men. What are you talking about? Newcastle were 1-0 up and they had 10 men. Shame on you, those bloody useless twats. I wanted them to beat
And then
Liverpool.
Darwin Núñez just suddenly turned into Prime R9 and slapped goals past them. Yeah, I remember.
How could they let that happen? Darwin Noodles is shit. I'm not going to hear that. He's just recently
smashed one off the post like an open goal.
Exactly, he missed an open goal. And I saw shameless Liverpool fans calling it the best assist they've seen because it bounced off the post and went straight to Gravenberch. So I'm not hearing that. Newcastle, I get it. They could beat us because, look, it doesn't take a good team to beat us at the moment. We're handing out W's to anyone who wants it. But I still think, Ten Hag will get them rolled up.
And plus, you're the Energy Trophy Kings, aren't you?
Exactly, man. We're the Red Bull Kings out here. No one can beat us at the Energy Drink Cup. So I think we'll win 2-0. But yeah, you could be right as well. I think the West Ham Arsenal game and United Newcastle games
they can go either way.
They could go either way, and we're using whatever excuses to try and defend our arguments. Let's go into the league then on the weekend. I think we're both playing on Saturday. No, we're playing on Saturday. I think you're playing on Sunday. So actually, you're playing Newcastle away. You're going up to Tyneside. So my agenda's flipping back the other way. I think that's going to be tough for you, man. Newcastle are playing decent at the moment.
You're so full of... You are absolutely full to the brim of
No, jokes aside, how do you think it's going to go? Because it is Newcastle at home is not easy.
I'd be really happy with a win. Like really happy with a win. I think it's going to be it'll probably be a draw or a loss though. Because it's not an easy game, and as much as Newcastle haven't been playing very well recently, that stadium is a fortress, man, and it's not an easy place to go at all. It's a long travel as well from where we are, so I can't see it being an easy game no matter what happens. And you know, I don't know. Maybe it really depends on the result before that, right? Like if we go and beat West Ham with, as I said, like a 50% team, then we might come into it with like a better strength 11 that are up for it. If we go into the West Ham game as you kind of saying like with a full strength type 11, and then have to play Newcastle like almost immediately after, that's a recipe for disaster. So it's a difficult one as well. Again, like with Newcastle, they get loads of chances. They create a lot of chances, and I hate to say that they've got. It looks like Callum Wilson's starting to catch form again. And he's going to start banging goals in, which infuriates me because he's part of that stupid podcast as well. But yeah, I do genuinely think that it's going to be like I'll sit on the fence and say like a 1-1 draw, but I could easily see them winning.
Okay, I think that's quite a fair assessment because as much as I've been gassing, going to St James's Park is not easy.
It's not easy at all.
We held licks there last season. Tottenham got the biggest of licks last season, and lots of different teams that we'd consider decent have gone up there and found it really difficult. So,
exactly.
But you guys did go up there last season and win, and I felt like you were really comfortable with that win. I think that was one of the big game performances we talked about last week from Odegaard that really stood out. He was very good in that game. So you never know. It's not impossible for you guys to go up there and get the W.
Styles make fights, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be.
Fights. Exactly.
It could be the case. But we've also seen Newcastle go to the Emirates and really frustrate you guys and make it a difficult game. So let's see. It could be one of those things where Eddie Howe's now feeling himself, in the Champions League.
He's going to take some risks. Yeah.
He might try and actually play against you guys, which I think will be better for you. But if he does go a bit more cagey, then I think that's probably the best shot they've got. So I'm going to go actually for a 1-0 Arsenal win, but I think it will be down those lines. I think he's going to humble himself. I think the performances that they've had recently, losing against Dortmund, drawing against Wolves, I'm hoping losing against us in the Energy Drink Cup, I think they'll come into it, getting a little bit of a humbling, and that could make life a bit more difficult for you. But yeah, let's see. It's going to be a great week of football, man. I can't lie. This last week has been really interesting, and things have been hotting up after the international break. But next week's going to be really, really fun as well. So yeah, let's see how it goes. But yeah, a lot of difficult fixtures. You're away for 2 games as well. I know you guys are generally better away, but you obviously found it quite difficult at Stamford Bridge in your last away game. So in the Premier League. So yeah, let's see. Let's see. But anyway, thanks, John. It's been a good one, a real long one actually. We're almost coming up to 2 hours. Bloody hell. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this week's pod. Thanks, John, for coming on and cracking me up with all your positive Arsenal should win predictions. And yeah, cheering me up after an absolute humbling in the Manchester derby earlier today. And yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment on YouTube if you're watching, and follow the podcast and leave a 5-star review if you're listening on the podcast platforms. And we'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everyone. Cheers, Ant.